Welcome to the Church Leadership Podcast. I'm your host, Don Hicks. The focus of this podcast is to provide coaching, equipping, and strengthening of church leaders who will lead and equip the believers for the work of ministry, for building up the body of Christ. This will enable healthy leaders and healthy churches to flourish and thrive as they carry out the Great Commission, the Great Commandment, in the power of the Holy Spirit. Welcome to Church Leadership in Focus. I'm your host, Don Hicks, and today I'm excited about having a returning guest. Paxton is back in the house today, and you heard from him back at sort of in the beginning of his first year at Liberty University. And Paxton, it's great to have you with us today.
It's great to be here. I'm so happy to be back. Like at the end of the semester, a whole full circle moment. But yeah, I'm so excited.
Well, to give you a little history, I was sitting at Thomas Road Baptist Church back at the beginning of his first year this year. And I saw him sitting by himself, and I was sitting by myself because I'm a choir widow. That means my wife and daughter sing in the choir, and I have to watch them and sit by myself. And I wonder sometimes, I wonder what his story is. Man, he's like an older man, and nobody's sitting by him. I wonder if he's married or unmarried. I wonder if his wife died. So I always feel like I have to tell people around me, oh, I'm married and my wife and daughter sing in the choir. That's why I sit by myself. You know, sometimes you feel like you have to tell people things, but I remember that you got my attention because you were sitting right down the row from me. It's like God said, you need to speak to that young man. Well, I put it off. And then if you've ever been to Thomas Road Baptist Church at the end of the service, if you get into an aisle, you're swept away like a flash flood.
Honestly,
okay?
Yes.
So I lost track of Paxton. And then I saw him almost at the doors, and I thought, oh, well, I'll see him again. I can't catch up with him. And God said, pursue that young man. So I did, and I finally caught up with you in front of the Pate Chapel. And I remember tapping you on the shoulder and saying, hey, my name's Don. What's your name?
Yep.
And that's where it started.
That's where it all began.
Yeah, so there's a lot to talk about because, Paxton, you've been on a journey. You came here not knowing anyone, like most college students. You had aspirations and dreams about why you were here. So why don't you pick up from there and just talk about that particular, what was it like coming on the campus for the first time?
That's a great question. I remember I got here early because I was doing some sort of event. So it required me and some other students or freshmen to be here a week early. So that was really interesting to come onto campus and it was empty. And so I didn't have people to help me, move in to my dorm or anything. So it was really weird. It was such a big campus and I didn't know my way around it at all. As it was just me and some other friends and just people that I met for the first time, just kind of like walking through campus. And it was kind of, nerve wracking, but it was also very cool because it was, a time of starting over. It was, the beginning of a new chapter. So while it was, such a big campus, it slowly, kind of started to all make sense and like the puzzle pieces came together. But it was a really interesting, but really cool experience.
Well, you said something that caught my attention. When you got here, nobody really cared about what you did in high school, about all the awards you got or any of those type of things. And so I think as a freshman, we need to understand, or even a transfer student, hey, you've had a story up until that time, but now it's going to be a new chapter to your book. And so you explained some of those feelings, but you didn't come in the midst of thousands and thousands of students moving in. You got kind of a unique opportunity. Hey, I can just kind of explore.
I did.
It's a large area to explore on that. So what was your dream when you came to Liberty?
I think I just really wanted to get plugged in. Wanted to take every opportunity that I get like just take every chance that I get and meet people and really just like not take this time for granted because it was an opportunity that's this is a college is an opportunity that will affect you in the long run because you're doing so many things, you're pouring into yourself that you're setting up like those stones leading into your future career and what that will look like. And so I knew that the Lord has brought me here, and I was so thankful for that, and I didn't want to just take anything for granted. And so my dream was to get plugged in, meet as many people as I could, and just live in every opportunity.
Well, what was your major when you first came in?
My major it digital media and journalism, which it still is, but now I've also added a pastoral leadership minor.
Oh, hey, there's a lot of students that do that. And I remember when we first met, I think for coffee or a meal or something, you were kind of wondering about that. Um, you know, well, I know God's called me to do this, but I also feel a draw toward pastoral ministry. And I remember that moment. I just kind of looked at you, Paxton, and I said, why not do them both? You know, 80% of all churches are bivocational that run under 100. And so you have to have some kind of profession, in there. But as a journalist, in your Christian worldview, pastoral ministry is not a bad thing because you're going to be shepherding people as an under shepherd in so many different ways. So, how about financially? I mean, were you fit and just wrote one big check, that day? Explain a little bit about where you were in that because a lot of freshmen come in and everybody is not financially secure. They have to do various things in order to keep going. Tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, definitely. College is, a huge endeavor, and it's definitely not cheap. And so I've really seen the Lord just kind of lay his hand and just bless me in different ways, whether it was through other people and just through answering prayers to, just help make this more of a reality and to get me through without worry and stress. And so, praying and asking, talking to you. And it's been really cool. The Lord's provided things like, just so I could, stay here. And so it's been awesome. It's been really cool to see him work in that way.
Well, thank you for sharing that because that's transparency. Because every student that comes on campus, unless their parents are just extremely wealthy and just writes a check for everything, there's a lot of pioneers that hit this campus every year. Now, uh, tell me a little bit about how you uh, start fitting in as far as when all the students got here.
Yeah.
You got here a week early, and what's some of the struggles that you experienced that probably every college student experiences?
Yeah. Coming onto campus, it's a different culture. It's not like your high school, it's not like your church youth group back home. So there's like a certain protocol that you have to get adjusted to when you come to college. And in your dorm area, you have a common room, and that's where people come and gather and talk and meet each other. And so in the beginning, I wasn't really sure exactly how to meet people. Like I would, talk to people if I like, saw them start up a conversation. But in my common room, I had to learn like, okay, if you come out during this time and you do work, then you put yourself out there to, meet other people. And my mom always gave me the advice, you have to be a friend to make a friend.
Yeah,
And so I
that's
put that
great advice she gave you.
it really is. And so I put that in the forefront of my mind, and I realized I was like, okay, a couple weeks in, and I spent a lot of my time in the library, but I was like, wait, I'm not actually like connecting it to anyone. So how do I do this? And I was like, oh, well, I see people going into our conference room to do homework. And so it was really nerve-wracking because I was like, what if I go in there and nobody talks to me? Or like, what if I go in there and it's just really awkward? And, I still did it, and I put myself out there, and I ended up meeting a lot of people from my hall on the brother and sister side. And we ended up, playing games and just kind of like open more opportunities. Like I recently went on a trip to Pennsylvania with my roommate and some other friends from my hall. And that all, happened just because I put myself out there and was courageous and wasn't scared.
Right.
And so it was really cool. But yeah, it's definitely like learning the culture. Like I had to learn like, okay, people usually come out into the common room late at night. and play games and talk. And so made sure, get my homework done at a good time so I could come out there, fellowship. And yeah, it was really cool, but it's definitely interesting. It's something that I'm still learning every day.
Okay, now as far as your major, um, what kind of opportunities uh, did you hope to get and experience the first year?
Yes. So I came to the Liberty as a seafarer for college for a weekend, and I got to see convocation. I got to see the different departments. And I remember when I first came here, we got to tour the digital media side and journalism side. And I saw the light radio station, and instantly I was like hooked. I thought it was so cool. I thought it was awesome. And I knew that I was like, I would love to work here and get an opportunity to help be on air and have my radio show and like learn about media in this way. And so I definitely wanted that. And then there was also during convocation, they have this show run by students and it's called New at LU. And it's kind of like, you could say kind of like a news station in a way, but people kind of they film and they memorize scripts and they record. And so those were two things that I really wanted to go into. And it was actually just something I'd prayed about. And so what's really cool is that at the end of the year, it was really interesting. Another really cool thing my mom always told me is you put yourself out there. So like if you want a job, if you want something, you go after it. And so
Your
even if
mom, we need to have your mom on the show
we
to give
should,
all this wisdom because it's invaluable.
it is. And I've realized, sometimes I like to think that I know it all. But then if I go my own way, I've learned this for the Lord and even for, the Lord will work through my mom. If I don't, think I have it all under control, I really don't. And I end up seeing that a little bit after. But then I learn from that mistake. So it's all right.
Oh, that's a good point. I mean, I remember my dad told me, look at other people and the mistakes they made, and you won't make them.
Yep, that's right.
When
That's
you do
true.
make a mistake, hey, confess it and, keep going because we're not perfect in any stretch of the imagination. But what's one of the first opportunities you had uh, to kind of fit in and look at doing some things at Liberty?
Yeah, the first opportunity was the radio station. So I'd been sending some emails to my boss there a couple of times and realized like, okay, I could do this for CSER, but maybe not as an actual job or something. And kind of like sent like two emails, didn't hear anything back. And I remember it was kind of close to the end of the first semester. I was like, you know what, let me just go walk by the radio station and just talk to him. And
I bet your mom gave you that advice too. Pursue your dream.
she did. She did. That's exactly what was going through my mind. And so I go by the radio station and the boss, he's there, and I actually get to talk to him and I realized that a lot of seniors will be leaving. And so he needed more people to work there. And he was able to get all my information and gave me the job right there on the spot. And so I've been working there all this semester and I've got to record commercials, got to brainstorm through possibly having my own radio show next year. So working through that, and then also just like some other cool opportunities because he also works with like the media. He's a professor too, and so he's been able to show me how to use some of the different editing softwares and like how to get my news voice, my news anchor voice, and different things like that.
Let me hear your news anchoring voice.
Maybe next time. I don't have it yet. I don't have it yet, but maybe in a couple of years when I'm back on this podcast, I'll be able to do
Well, you,
it.
you've got a great voice. I tell you.
Thank you.
Okay, so uh, you sent an email, didn't hear anything back, so now it's time to do recon. So you go straight there. Obviously, you hope to meet someone, and look at the opportunity. God's will has His timing.
Yeah,
It was God's will for you to do that, but it wasn't the right timing.
that's right.
But you said a key thing. He was losing his seniors, and he needed some other people,
Yep.
fresh talent. And there you were, all smiles and all. And God opened that. So what was another opportunity that you got?
Yes, a really cool opportunity that actually came from the radio station was being a part of New at LU and becoming a host for that. Because there was another girl who does that, and she also works at the radio station. And I'd recognized her from the screen, and I was like, "Oh, you do this, right?" She's like, "Yes." I was like, "Oh, I'd love to do this." And the first time I didn't say anything about it. I was like, I'll be, I'm not gonna like jump on it. But then I got to meet her another time, and I kind of brought it up, and she's like, "Oh yeah, I can give you the information." So I was able to then audition and then shadow and officially get the part and become a part of the team. And so that's something I've got the opportunity to do about 3 times this semester and totally love it. It's something that I wanna do as a career, and it's so much fun, but it's really cool because I feel like that's something only the Lord could have done. So, I'm thankful.
Well, I remember when you sent me that, and I was so proud of you. We've had a mentoring relationship. And by the way, when you're mentoring someone else, even when they're younger, I've learned things from Paxton.
Oh,
One of the big lessons that Paxton learned is one day I used the word Naugahyde,
yep,
and you didn't exactly know what that was. I said, I have a Naugahyde sofa. How many Naugahydes do you need to make one sofa? And so you were curious about that. So we have looked at different words that your generation and my generation, we've had discussions about that. But I was so proud of you being on that. And again, that was an opportunity that God opened up. It
was
started with an unanswered email. Then you pursued it. You went to the station, and then you got to know this girl. Then that led into this. I mean, as a freshman, that's almost unheard of, even among seniors. But God has a path. You were willing to not just sit there and be idle, but you were willing to put yourself out there. And even after no answer from the email, you pursued it. Now, what are some things that happen among our friends when all of a sudden, wow, my friend who's a sophomore now is doing radio and especially the LU. We're going to put a link on there on our page today about CFAL because you brought that up. That's an excellent way to find out about Liberty University as parents and also as students. Then also we're going to put up, we're going to get a link to one of yours so they can, go to that and see it.
oh,
Uh, you
that's a
know,
lot.
and I imagine when you watch it, you go, "Is that me? Does
Yeah,
this really happen? Pinch me." But when God begins to bring that, sometimes some negative voices come in, doesn't it?
for sure.
So, without naming any particular person or situation, just in general, did everybody rejoice that you got to do that?
I would say no, like, there was definitely, people or person, that had some different things to say, and I can, be really caught up in what other people think about me, and I definitely knew that was
All
gonna
of us
come.
can, Paxton, by
Yeah,
the way.
it's definitely something I've worked on this year and something I've gotten a lot better at, but, not everyone's gonna rejoice for you, and that's okay. You just have to focus on the ones who do.
That's right. And also, you can learn some lessons that you have to have perseverance. You have to learn rejection. Um, and an unanswered email feels like the end of the world. I know. I've been there too. Wow, they didn't even respond to this. What in the world? So that causes you not want to do that. But normally, when like getting guests for the podcast, there's some people I wanted to have on the podcast, and I thought, well, they're too famous, or they don't have time for this. Well, just put yourself out there and give an invitation. It'd be interesting what will happen. But you bring up an interesting point that all of us want to feel accepted, loved, respected. We want people to rejoice with us when something happens in their life, and we want to hear something in their life that you can rejoice in, as well. We want people to go, "Wow, way to go, buddy." I mean, that's awesome what God's doing. And I would say that I've known you over the last year, and we meet for discipleship and eating, and we just talk about things. I talk to you about things to get your perspective. You talk to me about things to get my perspective. And the whole thing about mentoring is I don't have all the answers. I got a lot of experiences, but I've given you some of those experiences sometimes, and you go, "Well, how can that be applied?" And so then I get to share with you. Go, "Oh, I see it now."
Yep.
So it's a conversation. It's sitting around, you know, whiteboarding. I love to whiteboard, and you might have understood me being surfboard. Now, I was born in Southern California, and at the age of 9, I did a pretty good job of surfing, but then we moved to Nashville, Tennessee, and there was no need for a surfboard. You know, there was
Totally different.
they went barefooted and so did I, but we went into the ocean. They just ran around out in their yards barefooted. But anyway, so you've learned some lessons along the way on that, and I'm sure you've had times that uh, trying to fit into a group or a person wants you in their group, and that changes and does, and you've learned a lot about every person's different,
Yes.
and everybody has a certain opinion about things, and that's why conversation is so important. And it's really neat to see how God has helped you to do that. We're going to take a break, but we'll be right back with Paxton in just a moment.
Hi, this is Trish Hicks. I am the host of Strength for the Journey podcast. I'm proud to be a financial sponsor of Church Health Solutions and the Church Leadership in Focus podcast. I encourage you to be a sponsor as well. My podcast, Strength for the Journey, brings you spiritual encouragement and devotional thoughts while pointing you to God's Word. You can find me on strengthforthejourney.buzzsprout.com. God bless you.
Welcome back to the podcast. I'm Don, the host, and this is Paxton, our guest today.
Hello.
And we've been talking about the first year of his experience at Liberty University as a freshman and how God has really taught him many, many things. Now, Paxton, what are some lessons that you've learned along the way that you could actually share with people on the podcast? Maybe they're a freshman or they want to transfer it into Liberty or whatever school they're going to. But what are some of the things that just stand out that you've learned about yourself this year and you've learned about others? So let's start with self. What's some things you've learned about yourself?
I've learned that you have to give yourself grace. I've learned that for me because I think through this year, I learned that I can hold myself to a very high standard, and sometimes it's too high, or I can be really serious in a moment where it's like you just need to relax. My aunt and uncle gave me some advice during the summer before coming to college about how don't take everything too seriously. And I was like, oh, I don't know. I was like, I have grades, I want to do well, I have all these opportunities and things. I feel like, I need to be pretty serious, and that is true. You definitely need to um hold yourself to some sort of standard, but also just know like this is your first time doing this. You're not going to do everything perfectly. You're going to make some mistakes. You're going to say something and you're going to regret it. And you're not going to always, I don't know, you're not always going to like look back and, and smile on that thing, but you have to give yourself grace and just know like this is your first time. If you put yourself out there with somebody trying to make a friend and it doesn't work out, that's all right because there are thousands of other people on this campus. And if you are doing your best, you're learning your study habits. You didn't do good on this test, but then you learned what's going on and then you do better on the next one. So it's like things like that, from academics to my social life to my spiritual life. Give yourself grace and just let yourself grow in a way that is natural for you. So like you might fall down in this one moment, but give yourself grace and learn from that, and then don't do it again and try something else and see how that works out. And so that's been a really big thing because I can be very strict with myself, but allowing myself to have grace and just know like, we're all feeling the same way, all these freshmen, we're all doing the
Yeah.
same thing. We're all trying to make it to, the end of our 4 years here and graduate. And so we're all doing it the same, and we just all need to give ourselves grace. And I think when not only you give yourself grace, but you give other people grace for trying,
Yes.
different things too. I think it makes it a very more makes a comfortable environment for both of you guys to live in. So that's definitely like the biggest thing that I've learned. But I've also got to see myself grow in boldness this year. Just being courageous. I have a little like flag in my room, and it says "Be strong and courageous" from Joshua 1:9. And
Right.
yes, and I knew that was something I wanted for myself because that can be something that I struggle with. And so I've really grown to be strong in the Lord, to be confident in Him, and also be courageous. There have been moments that I've had to speak up about something that I didn't quite agree with. And though it was really hard, um, I grew in that, and I was able to respect myself and see the Lord work through that. I think we might have been talking about this earlier. we like to have control over things. And like, if we don't know how it ends, then we don't want to do it. And I remember I was watching a movie, I think it was like War Room or something, but it was like, sometimes you're like, oh, what if I do this and this person just walks all over me? Or what if this happens and then I end up like failing at this? But you just have to trust God and do it anyway. And so I trusted God and, had to speak my mind about something to someone in a loving way, but the Lord ended up working it out. And so I've definitely grown in courageousness and boldness, which has been really cool to see.
Well, that's all putting yourself out there. And we put ourselves out there, people don't always accept us, you know, and so we can't base how we feel based on what other people think about us. And I think that's a struggle we all have. We just want to know, if I do this and they do that, what do I do next? We try to analyze everything and figure it out. But I've seen you grow tremendously from meeting you outside of Thomas Road Baptist Church and the times that we've spent, and just watching what God's done in your life. And it's amazing. And we talked a little bit about financial. Well, of course, you have a concern. Okay, am I going to need to work a job? Am I going to need to do this? And you're a hard worker. And then tell us about the opportunity that was presented to you about being an RA.
Yes, I had the opportunity for that, and hundreds of people also try out for that, and it's a very like grueling process. Liberty's very particular about the
In
people
what
that they
way?
pick.
What's kind of the process?
Yeah, you have to go through an interview, and you're not really exactly sure what you're going to be asked about, so you have to just be careful, be ready on the fly to give a right answer. But then also when you make it, there's like three different parts, and so when you make it to the experience week, you go through a lot of like these challenges, like they put you in different scenarios and see how you react and how you are in different situations, and so it's a very like could be really hard situation, but went through it and I ended up getting the opportunity to become an RA. And so I'm really excited because that's going to help me grow in my leadership, which is something that I had in mind when applying for this, because I was thinking about going into ministry and thinking about being in journalism, being in a leadership position. And so RA is going to grow me um, so many ways through this. And then it also even helps me with my academics. So I'm really thankful for this.
And it helps you financially too, doesn't it?
Yeah, it does.
So you didn't even know that was an opportunity. You just knew that you needed to make money. You just knew that, okay, the bills are coming in. And look how God has just superseded your anxieties and worries. And it's like, Paxton, I've got this. Okay, Lord, but I need a little evidence here, okay? And and that's okay.
Yeah.
But as we learn to trust the Lord and know that the Bible says that a man plans his path, but God orders his steps. I think that's the key there. So, what is the responsibility of an RA?
There's a lot of responsibilities of the RA, but the main one is just kind of you're over, a hall and specific people on that hall.
How many students usually?
I want to say maybe around 30 to 50. So there's a lot of people, and you have to make sure, that they are, abiding by the rules that Liberty has, keeping their rooms clean. You have like cleanliness checks, you have curfew checks. You have to make sure there are conflicts that go on with the hall, so you got to make sure that you can settle those and
Wait a
people.
minute. Conflict.
Yes.
Wow. I know we've talked about this, but just want to remind everybody, conflict is nothing more than an opportunity for God to be glorified through our actions. That way it doesn't go into destructive. So do they train you in any kind of conflict resolution skills?
Yes. Well, I'll be coming back 2 weeks earlier for training, so we'll definitely be going through all of that.
Okay, so that's going to be a big responsibility, and you're probably going to get rejected by some students that say, hey, the rules are too strict. Well, we all sign an agreement, even the professors, that we'll go by the rules and policies. But we'll probably have you in at the end, maybe the midpoint and at the end. So, what are some things that you uh, went through, and you'll have plenty of stories on that because you're the person holding them accountable to those things. And of course, it puts some pressure on you that you go by the same rules that you're enforcing,
Yep.
on that as well. And I told you that when I first came to Liberty in '77, we didn't have all these fancy buildings. We lived in an old hospital downtown Lynchburg, and the first floor was a nursing home. The next 3 floors were 120 guys. We had 4 to a room, and the room was about 8 by 8, like a prison cell. We had triple bunks in our case, and it was our RA was just gotten out of the Marines as a drill sergeant. So man, you talk about an inspection. He expected a quarter to bounce off your bed.
Wow.
But Liberty didn't have great mattresses. Most of them were from Goodwill, and who knows where they came from. And but it was hard to bounce anything off a bed. But he was patient, and he taught us one time, and then we're supposed to know it. So that's what he did. If we couldn't bounce a quarter, you got a rep. And so that built some discipline there. But it was a little rough. But you're going to have situations come up, and you're going to have to depend on God. You're going to have to depend on Scripture. In fact, Liberty University is a spiritual almost bubble. But what I've learned is that we see real life. I remember taking classes, and even the classes I teach now there, I give both sides of the issue because I want them to know, okay, here's the issue that maybe a secularist would see. This is a Christian worldview, or this is a humanist worldview, and how to bring those together. But sometimes we forget that everybody's different. Everybody that comes to Liberty University is not a Christian. Everybody that comes to Liberty University doesn't have a Christian worldview, but they're taught. And we see a lot of freshmen come to Christ through evangelism classes like Dr. Wheeler teaches. And we see a big harvest of students that maybe they thought they were saved, and they knew they weren't saved. And so it puts an environment of discipleship, of evangelism, but also, when you go to a convo, and our convos are pretty lively, you feel really great until about 15 minutes after you leave, and then you go, oh man, I need that again. But how do you protect your own personal spiritual life to stay centered? Do you have like a devotion time between you and the Lord, and reading, and because even when you go to this world-class university that we train young champions, you have to be disciplined in your own personal spiritual life, your emotional life, and your physical life.
Yes, you definitely do. And I've realized your spiritual quiet time with the Lord is very important. And that's something you have to implement into your every day during your college experience. But it's easier said than done because you're
Yes.
so busy. You've got school, you've got to have time to eat, you have to have time to do your homework, and then you want to have time to socialize. And so it can be really hard, especially if you have an 8:15 and then you have a 12 o'clock class and then you are tired. And so it's really interesting. But I've realized, because I was listening to a podcast about this, I think it was the singer, her name is Abby Gamboa. She's like a very well-known Christian artist. She was talking about how sometimes, depending on the life situation you're in, maybe you have like 12 minutes for the Lord or whatever. And though you might be used to like an hour, 30 minutes for God, he can still meet you there in that 12 minutes, and he can still nourish your soul, and you can still, have communion with the Lord in that 12 minutes. But sometimes you might have to change your schedule, because like back home, I would spend, like about an hour and a half with the Lord. But when I'm here with classes and everything during the week, I don't exactly have all that time to spend. So I've had to kind of be really strategic and like, okay, after this class, I don't have anything, so I can come back to my dorm and read my Bible. Or then I've realized, okay, is it better at night? Is it better in the morning? So as the semesters change and as my schedule changes, I've have to kind of like move that around to the best way that I can be by myself and just have time with the Lord.
Yeah. the whole challenge of being by yourself. You got a
Yes.
roommate, you got all these people, and what I've learned is if I don't have my time with the Lord, I don't have the strength that I need. I remember reading in the Bible in Thessalonians, pray without ceasing. I thought, how do you do that? Well, here's how it's developed in my life. When I get up in the morning, I say, good morning, Lord. Thank you for the restful sleep that I've had. God, I have some challenges today. Will you please lead and guide me? And I don't ever end the prayer. I might be an hour into the day in a meeting and I said, Lord, I need some wisdom on this, within my heart. And so you can talk to the Lord. It's not just when you're on your knees, but it's also during the day. Okay, Lord, I've done everything I know to do for this test. Just help me not to have test anxiety. Help me to go in there with confidence. And and I remember one time I didn't know the answer for something, and I said, "Oh, God, please give me the answer." And here's the answer from God. You got to have something in your brain in order for me to recall. and you know, but there were other times that God was so gracious, and I just like, man, I studied so hard, but that professor, some professors, they think that you ought to have a hard time like they did when they got their PhD. No excuses, you know, and the class that I teach is most important. So you better be ready for me. I mean, I'm coming from Bayer here. But I've learned over the years, I've been teaching at Liberty for 19 years. I don't need to have that kind of attitude. Just because I was handled a certain way, I don't need to pass that down to the students. I need to have some emotional intelligence, some understanding. And I remember we were having this big test in class one day. I taught residentially for 8 years, and the student came up to me and said, Sir, I'm not ready for this. My mother died yesterday, and I've got to go home today. And wow, we had a conversation about that. But that was, to me, illegitimate. Another student came in one time and said, Dr. Hicks, uh, I've been messing around this week. I didn't use my time wisely. And, I'm going to fail this test if I have to take it today. You know what I told him? Thank you. And yes, you have permission to do it another day.
Wow.
You got one more chance. Because I found that, being honest with someone, now you don't do it in front of the whole class, okay? But we all have bad days. If I'm sick to my stomach and I've been throwing up all night, the last thing the professor wants is you sitting there with a throw up bag in class, you
Yep.
know, or if you have problems with migraines or something like that. Now, if it was every week from the same student, oh, this week the dog ate my homework. I had a migraine the week before that. And I had a young lady come up to me one time and she had tears rolling down her. Look, she'd been crying for hours. She goes, I know this probably is not an excuse, but my boyfriend broke up with me this morning and I just can't think of anything except I just love him so much, Dr. Hicks. He just broke my heart. Well, that's a time, as the Bible say, laugh with those that laugh and cry with those that cry.
Yeah.
And I had compassion on her, said, here's a Kleenex. You're dismissed. Pull it together. And I gave her some advice. And I said, go to your RA and talk to him about it. So she came back to class. She aced the test, but also she was a girl that made A's on everything. And so she was under pressure and she just fell apart, boo-hooing. So what do you do when you're in front of the class and this girl's boo-hooing all over? You know, you have compassion. You take a moment on that. But if it's a constant thing, well, I broke up with another boy. I said, you need to be studying on instead of, trying to find a boy or, on that. But all of us have those kind of problems,
Yeah.
every single day. So I think compassion can be both sides as well. Now, give one piece of advice for somebody that's considering coming to LU. What would be the key word of advice that you would give to them?
I think I said this in the beginning, but it's really good and it's something, that I'm learning every day, but I would say it's to give yourself grace. Don't come in to LU or just to college in general, thinking you know it all, that you have it all planned. And I would even say, you always have an expectation of what things will look like. But, we see in the Bible that a lot of people had an expectation for what they thought Jesus, the Son of God, would look like. They thought he was going to be a warrior. But then he was born, in a manger in a barn,
Yeah,
and he did something completely different. He had a different plan in mind that was way better than what they had thought. But their expectations kind of got in the way. So I'd say, like, ask the Lord to, um, clean your heart and give you the right expectations, the right mindset, and then just also give yourself grace. As you're trying to meet people, as you're trying to get plugged in, even if things, we live in a fallen world there, so we're bound to go
that's
through
right.
really hard things. But the hope is that Jesus helps us through it. So give yourself grace and just trust in the Lord and knowing that He's walking with you through this. There's a verse in the Bible in Proverbs. I don't exactly know where, but it talks about how an ox is really good for a harvest, but it makes a horrible mess in the barn.
Yeah,
And so basically, basically what it was getting at is that, you can have a really good thing, but then you're also going to have something hard with that. Life isn't going to be perfect. So you have to take with the good with the bad. And so I think, even though you come to Liberty, it's a great Christian college, life is still going to happen. But don't
that's
let
right.
that like stop you or just let you ruin your whole experience.
And that's the blessing of teaching here. I got my undergraduate degree here, then I got a seminary degree from Midwestern Theological Seminary. Did some studying at Southern Seminary and Mid America Seminary, and there. But here's kind of what I've learned through all that. That liberty gives an opportunity for a person to be themselves and become a better version of themselves as well. And through spiritual leadership, high academic standards. I mean, where can you go to a university? My grandson Noah is 6 years old, and he's graduating. He tells everyone, "I'm graduating from kindergarten, you know, this next week, and I'm going to be in first grade." Yahoo! And so we have Grandpa Wednesdays, and one day he said, "Hey, can we just go ride around on the Liberty buses?" So he had his little backpack on, and so we walked down to the bus stop there outside of Green Hall, and all these students were looking at him, and he said, "Hey, my name's Noah. What's yours? What year are you in at LU?" And so this young lady said, "Well, aren't you cute?" "Yeah, well, I'm a freshman, and my name's Lily." And he goes, "Yeah, I go to LU. I'm in kindergarten." So, "Oh, you mean LCA?" "No." "Well, yeah, I go to LCA, but LCA is owned by LU, so I'm actually, LU student at the bottom of
Mm,
the ring."
mhm.
You know, and
That's
so we're
hilarious.
riding around all over the campus, man. He wants to go everywhere the bus goes, and he's talking to all these students. They're talking to him, and I just sit in the background. He's having a great time. These students are giving him advice, and one of them gave him a sucker, another one gave him a bag of chips. I said, "Hey, get something for me too, Noah." But it's an environment that grows you spiritually, academically, professionally. I mean, if you're going to be a doctor, there's a place for you. If you're going to be a business owner, if you say, "Hey, I want to be a welder," you can learn to be a welder and have business. I mean,
That's
all
right.
kinds of opportunities. And I think parents need to understand that we have a lot of things in place. We got a great police department for their safety. We got a great counseling department, shepherd department, RAs, and all these things that put an environment for a person to exceed. Now, when I was a freshman, I was scared to death. Okay, but then suddenly, when I was talking to my roommate, he said, "Hey, how are we going to fit in here?" And the first school I went to was Oklahoma Baptist University, and you had to wear these beanies, little green and yellow beanies, and so everybody know you're a freshman.
That's horrible.
And I
Oh,
said,
no.
and we had to do whatever upperclassmen, ethically and morally and biblically, they couldn't make us do other things outside of that. Had to carry their books, their backpacks,
Wow.
and things. And I said, "Hey, this beanie identifies us, but it's not who we are." I mean, we can use this for our advantage because, just look in the mirror. We do kind of look cute in it, and everybody knows. And so let's just go up to the senior and the sophomore girls and say, "Hey, I'm new here. Could you show me the ropes?"
Oh my gosh.
you know,
Put a
so they
spin
say,
on
"Yeah,
it.
carry my books to class." But one day we were figuring out, well, how are we going to meet girls? And we got to take our beanies off finally. So we kind of blended in with everybody else. And my roommate said, well, I wasn't very good at that in high school. I said, hey, this isn't high school anymore. Every freshman girl here, they might have been a beauty queen. They might have been in all these clubs, fancy, 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 but they're nothing here. So we're gonna leverage that. Hey, I'm Don. What's your name? Oh, hey, Susie. Well, what's going on in your life? Well, what's going on in my life? And so, uh, all of a sudden, other roommates were saying, hey, you got a thing going here. I said, yeah, we're going to open up a class that'll cost you a Coke and a donut to be able to get into the class to learn how to do this. But I think what we have to look at, hey, we're a clean slate when
Hmm.
we enter school. Okay. And you've given excellent advice spiritually, emotionally, physically, all of those things there is to let God let it happen.
Yeah.
God orders the steps. And I just want to say I'm so proud of what you've allowed God to do with you. You
Thank you.
notice what I've said. You've allowed God to do it. So I hope this will be a blessing for others to listen to be encouraged by. And thank you so much for coming on the podcast.
Yes, thank you for having me. And I even want to say, like you said, college is a clean slate, but because of the Lord, like if you put your trust in Him, every day is a new clean slate also, because of
Absolutely.
His new mercies. So even if, college is definitely a great place to start over, but I think even if you're not in college or anywhere else, like you can also know like, okay, this is a new day. This is also a clean slate that I can start over. I think that's like one of the joys that comes from just being a child of God. So,
You brought a very good point to that. When you're a Christian, God didn't expect you to be perfect.
yeah,
He knows that you're going to sin. And so what do we do with that? We don't have to carry that shame and guilt. We just ask God, God, forgive me for this. And we can start over. But what happens, the devil says, hey, what are you going to God for and confessing the same sin that you did yesterday and the day before that and the day before that? God's going to think you're crazy,
yeah,
that you're kind of bipolar here. Well, no, because what does God's word says? He cast it as far as the east is from the west, and they never meet.
that's right.
Thank you for sharing that because that's an excellent point. See, I told you beginning of this that I've mentored him and he's mentored me, and I appreciate that about Paxton because we can learn from each other, and so apply that. But I just want to encourage you to share this podcast with others. Also, to really think about what has been said today. And if you have some comments or questions, we'll get them to Paxton. If you have some questions for him or for our podcast. But I was also encourage you uh, to go to our link and help support this podcast. $3, $3 a week is I want to say Trump change. That'd be a play on Trump there, but anyway, uh, it's the cost of getting a cheap coffee today or something. But you can invest in this podcast so we can keep it going and take care of the ongoing expenses there. But it's my prayer for you, my friend, that this will be an encouragement to you as a church leader, and that God will bless you. And I'd like to just pray. In fact, why don't you just go ahead and end the podcast, Paxton, and have a prayer for those out there?
For sure. Lord, thank you so much for this opportunity and just thank you for this podcast and what you're doing through it. I pray for everyone listening, God, that you would just meet them where they are. You know where they've been, you know what they're going through right now. And I thank you so much for bringing them here. And I just pray over them, Father. You know exactly what their heart needs. You know exactly what's going on in their life because you are the God who sees. And so I ask that you would meet their needs and that you would bring them to you and that you would just light up their path and show them the right way to go. Help them to hold on to you and trust in you. And I just pray that you'd bless the rest of this day and that you would continue to work through Don Hicks in this podcast. In your name I pray. Amen.
Amen. God bless everyone. We'll see you again next week. The Church Leadership in Focus podcast is sponsored by Church Health Solutions. You may contact the host, Don Hicks, by email at don@churchhealthsolutions.com. Don welcomes ideas on church leadership topics from you that may be used in the future episodes of Church Leadership in Focus podcast. I invite you to share our link with others you know in church leadership and on your social media. Be sure to tune in for our next weekly episode. May the Lord Jesus give you wisdom and guidance as you lead and equip your church.